I made two signs using minimal tools that are very different from each other. One is made from real hardwood and one is made out of MDF, which is a manufactured wood product. Yeah, I had to get a little creative with that one. I was actually surprised about which one I liked more, and I'm interested in which one you prefer. Let's get started. Before I cut out some templates on the table saw, I'm making sure to raise the blade to its perfect height. Gotcha, I'm putting the blade just above the workpiece. For this hardwood sign, I thought the best route would be to make some templates out of MDF and then use those templates to cut out the hardwood letters. But as you'll see in a little bit, it did not go quite as expected and took quite a bit longer than I thought it would. I'm in a fairly small garage workshop, and I don't have the typical tools you see a lot of people using to make signs. I don't have a CNC or a laser or a bandsaw or a scroll saw, so I had to make do with what I had. And you'll see in the end it turned out pretty well. It was just getting there that took a little bit of finagling. I'm using my jigsaw to cut out the rough shape of each letter, and then I'm using this oscillating belt/spindle sander to get these letters refined to the exact shape I want them. For a while, I didn't think I could make a sign like this with my logo on it, but then I just decided to go for it, and I'm really glad that I did. You may be wondering, why go through all that trouble making the templates first, you silly goose? Why not just cut the letters out of the walnut hardwood first and skip the template making altogether? And that's actually a really great question, and I'm very impressed that you asked it. In my experience, I've just found that using templates will make your end product a little more precise, and I'm fine that it takes a little longer. I'm using my jigsaw to cut these letters to their rough shape, and then I'll take them over to the router table and use the templates to turn them into their final form. What could go wrong, right? Okay, that was terrifying. So I switched out the straight cut bit for a spiral compression bit, and that worked a little better, but I decided to go over to the sander and sand the letters down a little closer to the template. This way the router bit would not need to work as hard, but it didn't go quite as I had hoped. My rule is whenever I leave the wood shop, I need to have at least 10 fingers. So I used the palm router to cut the rest of these letters, and I felt a lot safer doing it. I had to get a little creative securing some of these letters to my workbench, and I used a double-sided tape. The brand is called X-Fasten. They're not a sponsor of this video, but their product has always worked really, really well. Fun fact, if you leave their tape on overnight, it can almost work too well. Back to the sander to smooth out some of those router bit lines, and I'm using CA glue to fill in the divot that was cut out of this T on the router table. As I always say, woodworking is 90% building and the other half is fixing your mistakes. I am always saying that. I expected making these MDF letters to take a lot less time than the hardwood letters. What I did not anticipate is me basically having to build another tool. You'll see what I mean in a minute. I quickly realized that cutting out the MDF letters would be extremely difficult if I used the jigsaw the way it was intended to be used. I'm trying to turn my jigsaw into a mini bandsaw of sorts because I thought taking the wood to the tool would be a lot easier than taking the tool to the wood. Am I the first person to come up with this idea of inverting the jigsaw? No. Are there better ways to build this setup? Absolutely. Am I going to continue talking in questions? I don't know yet. I thought about making plans for this, but then I realized it's a pretty simple build and there's a lot of great YouTube videos out there teaching you how to build one of these. I do, however, have written and video plans for more complex shop furniture builds like a folding workbench or a mobile miter saw station. So head over to thomascustomwoodworks.com if you're into that sort of thing. This ridiculous inverted jigsaw setup thing actually worked really well. The letters cut out really nicely and I felt safe doing it. Now, dust collection was non-existent, there was dust everywhere, but in the end, this did the job. Now, if I was going to cut out more letters and make more signs in the future, I would definitely invest in a nice scroll saw, but for a one-time use, this worked out sufficiently and was quote-unquote free because I already had the jigsaw and I just used scrap half-inch plywood that was already in my shop. The fonts I chose for these two TCW logo signs are fairly different, so I'm really interested to hear which one you like more in the comments. Also, the hardwood sign looks like natural hardwood. I just sprayed a clear coat over it, but the MDF sign I painted. So again, they look very different. It took me an embarrassingly long time to pick out the paint colors I wanted to use for the sign, and in the end, the background color looks completely different in the light. I'm cutting a rectangle on the table saw, which will be the back of the MDF sign, and then some thin strips for the border. The nice things about using MDF is it's a lot less expensive than hardwood, and it already comes in large sheets, so you don't have to mess around with any timely glue ups. The downsides are that it's pretty dang ugly, so you pretty much have to paint it, and the sawdust that results from cutting into it is really bad for you. Since I'm a glutton for punishment, I really wanted the borders of each of these signs to be a different color than the background. So even though it added an extra step and took a lot longer, as you'll see with the painted sign, I think it made it look really nice, but you can be the judge. I'm using a keyhole bit to cut some holes in the back of the hardwood sign to make hanging in a breeze, and I don't know what it is about this process, but I just love it. It is so satisfying. I love it so much that I cut 2 sets of holes in the back of the MDF sign, which you'll see in a minute, and it was totally on purpose. Totally on purpose. Notice the color I'm painting the back of this sign. It is French beige, but it will not look French beige when I hang it up. Midnight blue for the letters and the border, and this thing is actually coming together. I used walnut for the dark wood because walnut is the bee's knees, and hickory for the light wood, and the contrast turned out really nice. To finish it, I just used spray lacquer to add a little bit of protection, but also brighten the wood, and it was a really easy process. The entire process of making the MDF sign went a little too smoothly, which made me a little nervous, and it wasn't until I finished gluing on all the letters that I thought, maybe I should have checked where the keyholes were on the back of this sign. Although frustrating, it really wasn't that big of a deal, and I'm cutting 2 new holes in the back. Okay, time to hang these signs. I like to use a piece of wood to mark where the keyholes are and then transfer those markings to the wall. And then I use a level to make sure when I hang my sign is also level, because if the sign is not level, it would look like bad. Okay, my wife actually came up with this next trick. When taking nails out of the wall, use a towel so that the hammer doesn't imprint a dent into the wall. Works like a charm. In this light, the background color looks a lot more gray than French beige, but that's okay. Gray's good too. Normally, I'm a sucker for natural wood tones, but in this case, I think I like the painted sign better. Let me know which sign you like better, and remember, be kind, be awesome.